How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
Fantastic.
Recovered from your cinnamon?
Oh, dude, that was like a week ago, and the place still smells like cinnamon. So
Yeah, that sucked like way more than I was prepared for.
I mean, normally I wouldn't mind if somewhere smells like cinnamon, but I suppose if you had to eat a tablespoon of it.
oh, now I'm scared of donuts. Like that's just a
it's
fact.
it's one of those things where it's like, especially because anything to do with like food triggers like primal learning methods. Where it's just, no, it's a real thing. It bypasses every other form of learning that we have. Like there's I remember there's two forms of conditioning. Like there's different ways that you like hammer something into the human brain, but food aversion, like anything that makes you sick, goes like beep straight to the fucking animal bit, and just gives you like a disgust response straight off the bat.
I guess you're a couple of years after the big initial surge of the cinnamon challenge, so all the attention's on you guys now for doing that.
We hadn't heard of it. Someone
Yeah,
just suggested it.
I'd heard of it, but that was about it. Like, whenever I hear of like, oh, have you done the whatever X challenge the internet's doing, I always think, I'm sure that's going to be fucking retarded. Just
Yeah.
like planking and every other goddamn moronic thing that, happens.
Yeah, I was in the midst of university when it started, so I was at peak audience for stupid things. But, yeah, so, just to illustrate what I'm going to be doing, I'll record this interview and probably stick it up on our YouTube channel and tweet it to you guys or something, and then I'm going to write it up as a feature in the magazine as well.
Okay.
So you'll be in print and online. So one totally relevant method and one completely irrelevant. Not to do down my own medium. So-
Which do you think's the relevant and which the irrelevant these days?
I mean, there's less of a crowded market for print, but that's.
I think
just
Yeah, I think it's due for a comeback. We'll have a resurgence of print.
I like to read in the bath.
Well, maybe not to the popularity, but I think print has a place. It's just at the moment it's trying to compete with the internet, which is just suicide.
I think part of the mistake was that print publications tried to do news, and there's no point doing news in print because it's a month out of date by the time you get hold of it.
Well, see, I'd give print a little bit because the internet's kind of shooting itself in the foot because the internet goes for speed over accuracy, whereas print can really make a market for accuracy over speed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been trying to research a story over the last week, which has kind of illustrated that point, but we'll see whether it gets anywhere. So, how did you guys get started doing YouTube stuff?
Well, Gabe already did stuff with the artsy.
We kind of like used to. The thing with the arts used to start because we're just we're quite similar, and we used to just sort of hang out at the front of the bar and talk for ages.
Yeah.
And Yas was wanting to do something podcasty or whatever, and can't find anybody who will want to sit near him for an hour. So I was the fortunate soul who got stuck with that job, and the rest is history.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So we started really because I always wanted to do something like this. I was suffering from deep-seated depression and introversion, and I was like, I need something to talk to people through a different medium. And people have told us like when we play games together, we just say stupid shit, and it's funny. So I should probably not swear.
I think it's fine.
You can edit out the swears.
I'm not going to be editing out the swears. People can deal with the swears.
Okay. You should edit in more swears.
If people are fans enough of yours to listen to an interview with you, they're going to have heard enough swears.
True.
You want to hope so.
Yeah. So when did this kind of start?
It's been a year now.
Oh right. Yeah, because I started listening to your stuff in sort of September-ish last year. So yeah, it must have been right near the start. So what's
the whole thing?
What's with the name?
The name was we started doing fighting game stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was Aaron's first thing was fighting game tournaments mostly, like tournament running, tournament organizing.
And yeah, keep it classy, like the actual IT was taken. So we used Et because it's kind of the character in the game that's.
It's based on in Street Fighter 3 there's a British boxer called Dudley.
Right.
And he goes, keep it classy.
Yeah, he's kind of like the polar opposite of Balrog. So he's a very dignified, very gentlemanly boxer. And one of the things he says, I think it's in Ultra Street Fighter 4, isn't it? When you do his EX, he has this like dash punch thing, and while he's beating the shit out of you, he goes, "Keep it classy." And I was,
And it's also ironic because we swear a lot, so.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. Well, it fits with the logo as well, the sort of very elaborate kind of design.
Looks like a tramp stamp.
I wasn't going to say that.
One day.
I haven't played Street Fighter since vanilla Street Fighter 2 on the SNES.
Alright.
So my experiences are kind of limited. But okay, well that's interesting. I mean, because a lot of your videos are sort of fighting game focused. I mean, is that where you get a lot of your audience?
Not really. I mean, like, people really love it when we do fighting games because I think they love the versus side of it, because that's where we sort of, we'll just be in a normal common sentence and just drop in a few, like, slurs and jaunts, so.
Yeah, well,
it's just very real. That's what people do. That's what couch gaming is, and I think a lot of people miss that now with the online stuff. So
that's like all these things used to sort of exist back in the day, but they were, again, they were sort of social events. Like you'd go, like I would go over and watch a friend. A friend of mine back in the day had a really good computer, which I think was like a 586.
Damn.
And it had like a sound card and a CD drive, and I think a Voodoo FX fucking graphics thing or some
fancy
shit.
People.
Yeah. So, and I mean, this was early days PC gaming, so this shit was a fucking struggle. But like, you'd go over there and, I'd watch him play games.
Yeah.
Like these weren't really sort of like, these were more your sort of point and clicks or like the kind of really advanced ones that they had around at the time. And it was just a sort of way of playing or experiencing games that you didn't really, have access to. And combine that with a sort of absence of like couch multiplayer these days, and I think that sort of explains some of the growth of these sort of social gaming things.
I think that makes sense. I think particularly now there's money in it, there's an incentive for people to do more of that. So it's why you do get a bit of a very, very crowded market on YouTube.
The digital economy is weird to me. Like, I do not understand it. It is, like, I got an economist friend who says they don't like to talk about value because it's just, it's fantasy. It's just whatever you perceive. And, now watching someone play a goddamn video game, and in the old days that was a joke. Like that was a fucking punchline to you wasting your life playing video games. Yeah. And now it has value, but literally only in the perception. So there's just this bizarre fucking fantasy moving huge amounts of money around the internet digitally, and that just weirds me out because there's no there's no ground to it. I feel like Ron Paul at the moment. I'm like, we need to return video games to the gold standard. I want a box and I want a booklet.
We should bring back the Nintendo seal of quality.
Yeah, we need to audit
make
Twitch.
Our own quality.
Getting into the 30s, it's one of those times we're starting to notice like generational difference, and there's just, especially when you add like the massive change the internet was to that, it's just, sometimes it just fucking.
I think it really speaks of the future when people are watching you on New Year's Eve play a video game with your best friend while eating a stack of chicken wings.
Oh, good wings.
Like, that, to me, that blows my mind that someone would do that.
Well, I mean, it gets back to that thing of, like, that's the breadth of the social aspect of the internet and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
We're going to be a mukbang channel from now on, 100%.
Well, one of the things I've noticed about your channel, and what I kind of actually like about the channel, is that a lot of the videos are fairly short and fairly unedited. It's not like some of the more professional channels where it's just I think Gabe once used the phrase, you cut out every time you say the word
Yeah. That kind of, like, I used to really love jump cuts. Like, so they do have a comic value, like the ability to, like, click the brain creates a sort of startle sensation. But, I mean, I'd say generally because delivering, 5 or 10 minutes of fucking coherent speech is tough. Without sort of having a pause or without just getting wildly off topic. So every time, this is just, you'll see literally any fucking person talking to the camera on YouTube, they'll just use cuts. They'll just cut from when they say
Yeah, our videos are 100% unedited. Like, the only thing I edit in is the title and the end, and audio editing. That's it. Like, the rest is just done. I've never cut anything from a video, and I probably never will. Because, I mean, that's the point of these videos is... Well, just like someone asked me about that the other day. They said, why don't you edit things in and stuff like that? I'm like, well, it's just gameplay. Like, that's the visual. Most people are listening. They're not looking. It's just something to accompany the eyes. And I mean,
like when you leave the radio on the dog,
I mean,
when you leave the house, you got to have some noise in the house. I'm a bit like that.
I think that's much of Let's Playing is the radio left on for the dog. I mean, it's
yeah.
It kind of a lot of the time does work as background noise just as well as it works as something you sit and actively watch. I suppose that's part of the appeal. So, I mean, what kind of response have you had so far? You've got your Patreon and a few backers on there, but I mean, what have you made of the sort of growth of the channel over the last year?
It's been fun. It's been fun. Like everything's in like the green. Things keep going up, which is great. But like I see it as an outlet. Like I read the comments. Like every single comment that pops up, I will read it. Most of them I will reply to if there's a reply in there. That's what I really like about it. And I also really like statistics. So I like seeing like where in the world people are watching and stuff like that. When I realized that all of our viewers are mostly from the UK and the US, like that's awesome because that means like all our friends aren't watching, and that's great because friends are bastards. They won't tell you if your stuff's bad or not.
No, well, I mean, like, two things about the friend watching thing is, like, something that, like, Yas used to do, which used to bug the shit out of me, which was, you know, he'd ask a room if people were, like, kind of, he got a little slyer about it, but he'd ask, basically, like, check if people in the room are watching his stuff. And don't do that, like, ever. Like, and I've seen people who have, like, their own sort of, like, websites and things like that where they write, and they'll just straight up ask on, like, you know, Facebook, like, who reads my stuff? And it's like, look, you don't. There's no utility to the answer to that question because either you're reaching an audience or you're not, and you can't beg your friends to read because if that's where your audience is coming from, that's worse.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have 2 people who actually want to read something I do or whatever than 15 or 20 who feel fucking obligated.
Well, yeah, there's no value in that if someone is forced to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like those buy Twitter followers. It's like, what's that doing for me? Like, fucking hell.
I mean,
paying someone to call you handsome.
At least with those, they kind of can let you game the algorithm and get your tweets seen more. I mean, there is some. I mean, you are getting something.
Oh, so there is actually a purchase for that.
I believe so. Yeah, in that you get pushed up the top tweets rankings the more followers you have. But it's still probably not worth it. And not a very honest way of doing it.
It just feels really sad to me.
It's like people who buy like views and stuff for YouTube and stuff like that. It's like, dude, like really, like what are you accomplishing?
It's really that fucking like why like it's that fucking American Idol thing of like I've seen American Idol and I hate it. And I hate those fucking soft song things. I also a girlfriend got me into watching So You Think You Can Dance, like the Australian version, and I was originally really resistant to that because I just thought it was going to be the same fucking thing and I wasn't interested. But the thing is, no one can name you more than 2 famous dancers.
That's
like,
holy shit.
Name one. Like, think of one.
I can't name
one. Unless you're. Yeah.
Damn it.
Bruce Forsyth.
I don't even know who Bruce Forsyth is. Yeah, I believe it. I completely made
Bruce
up, but I believe
Foreskin is my favorite dancer.
Bruce Foreskin. So
loose Foreskin.
Yeah. So the difference you had between these 2 shows was So You Think You Can Dance was filled with people who were hell bent on doing something, even though it wasn't like the pathway to fame. Whereas the other singing in the fucking, you know, America's Got Talent or whatever, those are people who just want to be famous. And I think that it's more interesting, like, real creativity comes from you doing something that you'd be doing for free and for people than trying to get to 1 million views.
Exactly right.
Because, you know, there's a process to this. Like, you don't just... Getting 1 million views in and of itself shouldn't be the fucking goal.
No.
Like, you should want to create something that, you know, reaches its audience or does whatever it does. And, you know, I just find all those, like, buy this, buy that, fucking game the system bullshit. It's really fucking fundamentally sad.
I think it's just really cool because, you know, I get to play old games that I remember from my childhood with my best friend, you know, who I didn't know back then.
You know.
So we get to see each other's different reactions, and then we get to see, like, audiences' reactions to that. And that's really cool to me. I like that.
That's largely why I do it in spare time. You know?
It's fun, like...
Yeah, the process, again, you know, on a personal level, the process should be fun. I mean, don't turn it into fucking, you know, if it stops being fun, why are you doing it?
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, I think, is there a point at which the channel would get so big, or your presence could get so big that it would become more difficult to interact with the audience and have any kind of connection to them?
Not really. I mean, like, if we were, like, bought out with it by a network or something and was, like, throwing money at us, like, to
completely sell out, yeah.
Like, to shill, like, that would be harder. Okay. But I don't think you could ever silence me, like, I don't
like the idea of, I don't know, like, I'm kind of pathological when it comes to anything creative. Like,
I don't want people to own my stuff.
Well, fundamentally, I'm very, very, like, creator-oriented. Yeah. Like, the creator has absolute rights. I think interacting with an audience too much, or really much at all, is very fucking risky. Because I think you end up just, like, hearing sort of, like, the loudest. And, you know, I think that, you know, it gets back to that, why are you making something? Are you making something for attention, or are you making something because you want to make it? And for that sort of thing, for me, like, it's, I don't care. Like, I do this stuff to an empty room. That was why I got Twitter originally.
Yeah.
Was like, Cormac and a few other people I worked with at the bar were like, you should write these down. And I'm like, why would I do that? And I could get a Twitter. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's kind of my
shouting
brain
into
toilet.
the void.
Yeah, it's, this is all stuff I'd be doing anyway. And that's, that I think.
There was a writer called John Ronson who once said, Facebook is where you tell lies about yourself to your friends. Twitter is where you tell the truth about yourself to strangers. So I think it was quite a good line.
That's very true, yeah.
So, I mean, it's good that it's sort of fun, but are there difficulties with recording? What's the most difficult thing you've run into?
We haven't really had too much difficulty with that. It's finding time. Like, I mean, I work full time. Gabe doesn't drive. Lives a fair bit away, so that's hard. The only ever really hard thing I came across is when we lost like 3 hours of audio of like Bobsy.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that was never going to happen again. So
I mean, fortunately these days, and this is something I kind of harp on about a lot, is the barriers to production are really very small.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was like 17, 18, and in high school, like, being able to, like, recording a video game for starters involved a camera pointed at a TV, and there was literally no reason you'd do that except to prove you beat something to a friend who called you a liar. These cameras were huge. They were shoulder mounted. You put a fucking VHS in them, fucking tape, and editing was done in the fucking camera. Like, you pushed pause and record to get an edit. Like, the editing software used to be on a expensive, like, not fucking free. A machine that could edit was expensive. You used to have to use fucking film. All of this stuff was so incredibly, incredibly hard. There were all these things that were expensive, and they took real sort of expertise. Like, there was no way you could kind of bumble through and sort of teach yourself. Whereas these days, it's pretty much there on a silver goddamn platter.
I just point my camera at something on my phone, press record. I can put that straight on YouTube from my phone.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
And I mean, that's, there's never been a point in history where there's been so few barriers between, like, people who, want to make something in a potential audience. So I always say that's something that people should take advantage of.
Does the Australian internet not get in the way?
It does, but
it slows things down a little.
That's all it does, really. Like, if you really got the drive and the passion to create something and put it out there, you will.
I mean, I'm used to putting the internet on to do something overnight anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we grew up. Like,
you had to do like major downloads on dial-up overnight, otherwise someone would call.
And then you'd wake up and it would like have failed.
Yeah, just somewhere in between. And bear in mind, this is like trying to download something that was like 100 meg, which in those days was just that was like looking at a mountain. You'd sigh, and you'd have to think about how much you really wanted this.
I remember when getting into emulation for the first time, downloading a SNES ROM that was like 5 meg, and just sitting there watching the cat and going, come on.
Yeah, I had some heartbreak with early Neo Geo emulation.
Oh, dude.
But when I got fucking King of Fighters 98 to work on my fucking, and I was using a gamepad that had 4 working buttons after I'd fucking taken it apart, clean it, like that was heaven. Now it's so easy, but that's and I get it.
That's an experience that a lot of people sort of growing up now, even some of your younger viewers aren't going to know. I mean, I was one of the very last sort of years of using dial-up. I mean, it got kind of replaced when I was about 10. So I do remember sort of having to weigh up, is it quicker for me to download this game or take a trip into town and buy it? But that's an experience that is going to be beyond a lot of people sort of in the next few years.
Yeah, well, it's something I keep, again, one of those generational, changes where, I mean, 10 years doesn't seem like a lot, and really, ultimately 10 years isn't, but 10 years that covers the span of, like, before internet and after, like, it gets referred to as Web 2.0, because, the kind of original, the space between about 95 and 2005, like, yeah, the web existed and you could, like, call the internet on the phone and have it, like, send you game cheats and stuff, but, it was not the omnipresent, well-organized thing that it is today. Like, if you wanted to find something out, it was a fucking chore. Like, if you wanted to look something, if you wanted to look something up, like, that was, you didn't know where to begin. Like, pre-Google being fucking everywhere.
Oh, dude, ask Jeeves.
Oh, no, yeah. I need to find something out. Time to Alta Vista it. Like, and it's just, there is a lot of like what bugs me on the internet today is just from people who don't seem to remember a before time.
Ah, dude,
You know, like
weak.
just well, like people these days will complain about being alone on Facebook to friends and then immediately get support, and it's like that used to not be there. Like it was just you and four walls. You know,
Yeah.
good luck with that, chum. Like it's just. It's that old man thing of like, I'm getting to that point of like, oh, a good war will sort you out, where I just, suffering and misery that I dealt with is now just sort of completely gone. And the baseline of sadness is now like a good day for me.
Yeah.
So you just look around and it's just like, come on, man, it's not that bad.
Do you think maybe the rise of the internet has contributed to that? If everyone is around, maybe it's easier to feel lonely because you're not aware that everyone else is there as well.
I've heard that argument, like it's easy to feel alone in a crowd, but there's a space for everybody on the internet.
Oh yeah.
I know, I've seen people who make money drawing fucking furry incest on the internet. If there's a community, there's a community for fucking everything. There's a community for lonely, miserable shit people. There's a community of people who inflate their ball sacks with saline.
That's I do.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I can't stress this enough.
No.
Yeah, you can feel alone in a crowd, but there is a fucking titanic difference between that and there being nobody else around you.
Yeah.
Like that's, I challenge someone, and it's an impossible challenge to fulfill really these days because the internet's there. Like having the internet down, and like knowing that the internet is there is like relaxing. Like there's a connection, even no matter what's going on, that there's something you can look at, something you can interact with, and again, the idea wasn't even there. It was you and four fucking walls, and maybe whatever was on TV. Like you had
TV guide.
Yeah, the TV guide, which you'd circled shit in and like have to stay up till fucking 1 a.m. to
Unless
catch.
it was MASH. MASH
Scrubs.
was on every afternoon at the same time.
Yeah.
You think? What interests me about a lot of these subcultures, the ones you just mentioned, not necessarily the saline one, but but I know furries existed pre-internet, and I just wonder how did these people get together pre-internet? Did you take out an advert in a magazine? I mean,
there would have been. I knew there were also sort of pre-net. They were like pre-major web. There was still kind of text sort of. I can't remember what they're called these days. Like the IRC channels. There were what are those things called? There were phone lines. There were phone party lines.
Really?
Yeah, they weren't very popular in Australia, but I know in the States they got a lot of play. They were kind of like a real early forum you listened to. That, like, and, sort of enthusiast press and magazines were pretty much it. Like, that's something I say about the internet is I don't think the internet's really made so much, as much as it's made things visible.
Yeah.
Like, these people were probably around before, and I've seen some stuff on, like, sort of vintage, erotica and stuff like that, and it's like the same basic weird shit's still around. It's just, back in the old days, there was no real, you couldn't just sort of accidentally stumble on
Yeah,
it.
you couldn't just, like, click stumble and then see where you end up.
Yeah, and that's the organization of the internet again. Like, I could look for perversions that I wouldn't, under any other circumstance, know to look for.
Yeah.
By going to places that collect and organize and categorize these things.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And
It's the archival thing that interests me.
Yeah, how much, given the sort of preponderance of YouTubers and Let's Playing and things now, although this archive is going to be there, how easy do you think in 10, 15 years a lot of this stuff's going to be to find? Because if there's so much out there, do you think some of it will disappear?
I think it's already too hard to find things at the moment. Like, that's the thing is everyone does this sort of stuff. Everyone sees a channel and it goes, I want to do that, and then puts it up there. The difference is most of these people aren't functioning human beings. And it's hard to do a Let's Play, especially by yourself, because, you're just talking to no one. It's hard to bounce. And I think
the best one I ever saw that was just one lone dude was like some guy. It was playing like Dora the Explorer on the Game Boy Advance, and it was mostly just this kind of weirdly deep voice, kind of bro-y American dude,
Amazing.
Just playing this game, describing what he's doing. It's a 15-minute video. There's a pause where he can't think of anything to say, and then just, sometimes I wish I could fart out of my dick, and then just continues playing Dora the Explorer. And, like, that's, I mean, I think that
It's the content. It's the constant quest for more. It will just the hunger's there. People will just keep producing content as long as people watch it. So it's just going to keep getting.
As much as we like to archive, some of it'll vanish and be deleted, and to very little fanfare or worry. But so it goes.
Like,
I mean, you
who
have to.
knows? Maybe in 20 years, someone will find a video and go, "These guys are making dick jokes." It's history.
Well, that is one thing. Like, as a fucking history fan and student and sort of degree holder of.
I like history.
Fucking love the internet for that. Like, one of my favorite websites on the whole fucking internet is Know Your Meme, because they write really good history, and they write history in a way like, again, so much of what we know about like ancient stuff is cribbed from like Cicero's letters, for instance, is a good way to find out about Rome. This guy's personal correspondence, and now people have the idea that, hey, maybe this stuff's important, or hey, maybe we should archive this. So there's they do detailed breakdowns of how so much of this shit sort of starts, and it's even though it's recent, it's a really sort of fascinating look at sort of the nature of history and how how things get recorded and how things get remembered. So I always recommend, if you're interested in the internet, always read Know Your Meme.
It's good.
Yeah.
Will they be opening their physical museum of memes, shaped like a giant Harambe with a Doge face?
Fucking, you joke, but
it will happen.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, as it is, I'm kind of again, it's that old man thing creeping in of I'm kind of dreading, because this'll hit the sort of surge of the internet, and that first generation of internet children is just chaotic. Like, there's no sort of organization yet, because you have to bump into the walls to find out what hurts.
Yeah.
So all this fucking internet leaking into real life and stuff is gonna get worse before it gets better. So just, I don't know, strap yourself in.
Like, once virtual reality is a thing and I can live in it, just strap me in. I don't want to see any of this anymore.
Better than life.
It's interesting. I mean, because you raise an interesting point that, a lot of this internet culture and stuff is a response to a generation who grew up with traditional media saying, right, well, they're not going to fund this weird thing we want to do. We'll do it ourselves and put it online. Is there going to be a point where the kids who grew up with the internet culture are going to say, right, we want structure and curation and quality now, please, and sort of revert back to where it was before?
Well, I think, it's a little bit... I don't think we're going to revert exactly. I think, when I said earlier about the way that there's no barriers anymore, the creative space is fundamentally infinite. So there's literally a space for everyone. So if you want something curated, if you want something organized, these things will still get made. I mean, Netflix is, purely digital. Or, they're saying you can still get DVDs from them or whatever for some bizarre reason. But
it's for the things they don't have rights to stream.
Right. Well, they produce their own content. They put it straight up on the internet. They do it in a way that's, pretty much neglects a lot of sort of old media ways of doing things, but they're still organized, written, curated. Fucking Luke Cage is coming out, and really hyped for that. And so I think, there will, even in the sort of mad digital, sort of future, things like that will still exist. But there will also just be, plenty of sort of the alternative. But again, I don't think at this point there has to be sort of one over the other.
Yeah.
I think, we're getting to that point where it's just going to be everything can kind of live,
everything
by itself.
Coexist.
Yeah, coexisting.
Peacefully.
So to get back onto the gaming topics after our long walk through internet culture,
that was my fault.
That's fine. You have a reputation for waffling.
Oh yeah.
What's the future for Keep It Classy? You got any projects in the works?
We've got a butt ton of stuff recorded that I have to put up. Gabe and I, after the cinnamon, we went nuts. It jazzed us.
Because it was that thing of you survive a lethal threat, so suddenly you want to live and you're sort of excited.
I didn't know it was so deadly. We looked it up after, and people have died from this, and we're just oh my god. We're we lived. Let's seize it. We had Comic-Con the next day that we were running a big gaming section, and we were are you tired? Nope. Fuck.
Nope.
All right. 6 hours straight of recording and just bizarre shit. We just got games from our childhood and Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man is actually great. I really
Pepsi Man is the best.
I can't recommend Pepsi Man enough. I think it's one of those things where I'm not sure. I need to research it a bit, but if it was not deliberate, it It is
It had to
borderline.
be deliberate.
Well, I don't know.
You'd
Like,
hope.
it's hard to find, but it's borderline a sort of work of Banksy-ish irony. Like, it feels like a complete nutter ad, but it is presented and structured in a way that it feels like it's completely subverting the whole. Like, it's just a giant fuck you to Pepsi and commercialism in and of itself. And I love that I can, sort of be wondering that while I'm playing this bizarre old PS1 game. But I really, Pepsi Man's so strange.
I like that old generation, which I kind of missed, but I like that old generation of sort of overt ad games. I think there was a McDonald's one. There was a bizarre one that was developed and never released called Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill, I think, which was about Bill Clinton's cat.
Amazing.
Holy shit.
Platformer.
You see if there's a beta.
Unfortunately, it was never released, and I don't think a ROM's been leaked. But it would be fantastic to play. I think there was an M&M's game on the GameCube. Which was a kind of fantasy RPG for some reason. But yeah, so that's what you've been playing recently. Anything else interesting?
No, we're just going to keep going with the gameplay stuff. I'm going to TwitchCon in a few days in the US, so we take lots of videos and stuff over there. There's a secret project we're working on, which is going to be it's going to be Gabe's magnum opus.
Okay.
It's something very...
I've decided to put my arts degree to full use.
Yeah, it's gonna be really good. We don't want to say anything about it because we want it just to come out and be good, and it's just going to be something that's, trust me, no one will be ready for it.
It's kind of a bucket list thing for me.
Yeah.
But again, it's in that kind of pathological, selfish sort of creator thing that I have where
Are you writing your biography?
No, it's something I'm making purely for me and my entertainment, and again, it's like but personally, like, 'cause it's again something I really appreciate in other creators is I like people who make shit without any consideration for an audience, because I'm kind of interested to see like what other people find interesting, and I don't like that kind of filtration. I don't like what it can do to sort of creative works. So, the example I always give is I've never laughed at Tim and Eric, like, at all. I'll sit there and and people will try to show me things, and it's stone fucking faced watching them muck about. But I also highly respect the fact that they are literally, they do not look like they're sitting and thinking, I wonder if this will please anybody. It really, I just get the sense of just, fuck you. And that, I appreciate that. Like, I have to respect that level of fuck you.
That can go a couple of ways, though, can't it? I mean, one direction you get Suda51, the other direction you get Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, the creative space is infinite. Say fuck you and find the audience that might actually appreciate
That's
you.
right. Like, people kept complaining about our audio for a long time, and we just kept saying fuck you. And eventually,
well, I think
I just improved
technical
over time.
issues.
That's the thing. That's the thing I got to learn. Over time, I've never done any audio editing, so it was a new space for me, and people still watching. They'd complain, but they still watch. So obviously,
I'm also trying to write a little bit more, just because, again, putting that fucking arts degree to good use, and I think part of I might have signed myself up for honors. I'm not sure. I clicked something, and I'm going to an information day.
I'm going to buy a doctorate in Russia.
So I just I did a lot of some of my best work at uni was history writing. So I'm sort of in the middle of working on a few things, and one of them's kind of art history, but of video games, because there's a few really sort of unique occurrences within sort of video games that I think are kind of interesting to juxtapose with the rest of art and the development of art that I think could kind of modify how we approach some things and make for just a more fun experience for everybody.
Oh, well, that sounds interesting. I mean, this is a sort of exclusive that you've got these secret projects you're working on, I guess. What I've
secret just means I don't want anyone to know I've failed.
Okay.
If nothing happens, nobody cares.
Yeah.
But I mean, also that, as one of my other fucking pet peeves is, the fucking world of Kickstarter and whatnot's kind of really just ripped this wound open for me of just fucking finish something before you promise it.
Yeah.
It does my noodle. Just make something, make it modestly if you have to, and build from there. Don't fucking try and, design the next fucking wheel and scream for money on Kickstarter or whatever, because you'll fly fucking too close to the sun and on some really modest fucking ideas too. Like, so many games have been wrecked by that, like just feature creep and trying to let's turn this into the next big thing, and it's like, just get something simple made. A simple meal, well produced, is delicious. A simple game, it doesn't have to fucking involve a whole new gameplay mechanic or whatever. Just get it made.
Do you not think there's some pressure to stand out from the crowd though?
I mean, that can be done in a lot of ways. I didn't hear fucking word one about like Undertale until well after it was released.
Yeah, someone
and that
was
got
like,
me by word
you
of
guys
mouth.
should play Undertale, and then they sent us a code, and we're like, okay.
I think again, and it gets back to that. I would rather, something find an audience honestly, regardless of how long that takes or how small that audience is, than try and scream for anything larger.
Honestly, I think people aren't trying to strive to be different enough. I mean, that's the thing, is you'll get a game like, for example, like DayZ or something, and then just suddenly 10 others will pop up that are exactly the same with one feature. So, like, I think people are just going, that's a great idea. How can we improve it? How can we be better?
Not even that.
And it's just
trying to improve it.
Just trying to make a quick
do that. Hopefully that'll sort of steady on a little bit. Like, again, I think it's that issue of just, at the moment, there's just so much access. So, people are pumping stuff out more than they're creating.
I like to pump.
So, gradually that'll sort of steady on. But it's just that, that initial moment when you get like this amazing sort of digital distribution platform and the capacity to sort of get, funding via completely non-traditional means, everything goes kind of crazy. So we're in this period, and like video games particularly have just had nothing but periods of insane growth because it's been tied to like a period in our history where we've had technology doing the same. But hopefully things will steady on a little bit and just I mean, I don't think there's any real problem if it doesn't sort of settle in, but there are processes to keep sort of customers aware of what's shit and what isn't, and I think those are getting more standardized and easier to use now, so that's good.
I think it's an interesting. We're in an interesting stage in gaming because we're at about the sort of age of gaming that the film industry was in the sort of late 20s, where you've just got sort of color and voices. I mean, where does it go from here? There's a long way of development to go yet. I mean, what do you think will be the next big thing?
I mean, that's the thing about fucking gaming is, like, no other art form in history has had this much development this quickly.
No.
Like, in ancient times, it took you just didn't know a painting technique to do perspective and things like that for like nearly thousands of years in some situations. These developments and developments in cinema. Like, what was the last major development in cinema? Whereas gaming, every 5 years, there's been some fucking borderline epical change to how games can be made and what you can do with them. And I think that's kind of really artificially keyed us to that expectation.
Yeah.
And I do think things are steadying on now, like, take Shovel Knight, for instance. That game is just basically a really, really good NES game.
Yeah, dude.
And I really want people to sort of, creators to start looking back and seeing, rather than, because, there was the old days where it was like, okay, we've gone from 8-bit to 16-bit, now we have polygons, so the expectation was do polygons.
Yeah.
And, now I think we can start actually going, all right, well, do we need to do polygons? That's what happened to fucking Sonic. Sonic's a game that works great in 2D, it doesn't work great in 3D, but the expectation was games these days are 3D. Whereas I think, just go back, 2D is not worse. It's just now it's a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And I think if you look at a lot of the later games from the 2D era, particularly on the Game Boy Advance and etc., there's some spectacular looking games that just don't compare much better to 3D games of the time.
Yeah, I mean, one that I don't know, I haven't seen anything about it recently, but was it Cuphead?
Cuphead, yeah. Cuphead's great.
Yeah, is it out? I don't know.
No, nothing out.
Shit. But I mean, yeah, like you can take sort of older, simpler sort of, art styles, gameplay styles, and, now that you can have a game size larger than, a meg or two, which was kind of the old limit, you can do so much with them. You can have like better music, you can have voice acting, you can, have amazingly detailed animations. And I think that's, I really want that to sort of, spread out. So we're not in that position where people are thinking that every new epical change that gaming sort of brings has to be the new standard. Like, you can go back, you can do retro style stuff. And, I think that opens up a lot of creativity.
I think, that's some things have just endured stylistic. I mean, the chiptune scene, for example, is hugely popular, and I think, I'm not sure quite why that is. Maybe it's just because chiptunes were inherently more melodic than current game music, just because of the limitations of the format. But that seems to have wasn't even dented by the technological development in sort of late 90s of being able to put pre-recorded music on CDs.
Creativity is a response to limitation. You can, if you pay an orchestra to do a great, soundtrack and you put that on your thing, it's like, I really love amateur cosplay instead of like the pro stuff, because you look at like the insane pro stuff and it's like watching a Cirque du Soleil acrobat. Like, you're like, oh, of course they can do that. I'd be more impressed watching Aaron do a backflip than watching, a gymnast do like 40. Happen. Yeah. And so that, to me, is like where a lot of the love of chiptunes comes from, is like how much can you pull off with limited, supply.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, because I fucking love, I think some of the early Mega Man music was some of my
floppy drives
favorite.
making music, like people programming a bunch of floppy drives to like play Sandstorm by Darude. Like that like broke me. Like, it's like, who would ever in their right mind think to do that?
A guy actually, I think he's a Swede, made a chiptunes organ. Like, he took one of those old fucking organs that like my grandma used to have sitting around the house, and like made it so you can actually live play chiptunes on this fucking thing,
which is incredible.
It's fucking great. Like, so it's that matter of like creative niches. Like, we're in, a time in our history where we're fortunate enough to have so few barriers between creators and, consumers of art that why not? You can have a niche for fucking anything.
So, just to round this off, I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of I think you got a fair number of viewers brought in by Gabe's involvement with Yahtzee and doing the Let's Drown Out stuff. Now that that's over, have you kept up with any of his more recent stuff? He did a live stream on the Escapist Twitch channel the other day. How do you think he'll get on without Gabe?
As it is, I don't watch Yahtzee, so I have no clue. Like, I don't watch people I know, personally. It's weird to me.
No. I had this
to listen to a familiar voice, I guess, but yeah.
Well, I had this conversation with him like years ago. It was just like, dude, I know you. Like, I can talk to you. I don't need to, I don't expect. And it gets back to that thing of I don't expect anybody I know to watch or read anything I do.
Plus, I just don't really enjoy his content. Like, it's not for me, so I don't watch it. Yeah. It's pretty much me, like, when I was down and cynical on every single thing ever. So it's kind of like seeing my, like, angst years. I'm like, yeah, no.
I don't know. I want him to do more actual sort of critical work. But I was trying to nag him into doing, like, some sort of long form stuff on Silent Hill 2 and things like that. But I don't know, he was always really resistant, but hopefully now he's in more of a sort of settled work environment. He'll be able to spend a little more time on that. Because he does, he has all these interesting things, but very little of it actually comes out in his online work. Like, you'll hear him if you've, got the opportunity to sit down and talk to him, but, most of his online work is sort of, entertainment or humor based. So, and I was like, it was something I used to bring up constantly. There's a few, like, discussions of it in some of our drown outs where I've been sort of pestering him to do it. I don't know, that'd be my hope, as he actually gets into sort of some more critical work.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to listen to some of the drown outs and then listen to you guys, because there's a very different dynamic, I think, between the two of you and Gabe and Yahtzee.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, we're
Aaron's a different human being.
I'm happy.
Well, that's the thing. It's a lot more. It's a lot more energetic, a lot more sort of lively between you two.
I think that also comes like with the sort of games we're playing as well.
Yeah, like
That's true.
because normally, like we play a lot of like co-op stuff and things like that, and it was something I was
stuff as well.
faster paced things, and again, like the video size will be smaller, and sometimes we can pause it and take a break, and I can go get something to eat, or sort of do whatever I need to do to sort of perk myself up a little bit. But yeah, it's different. Like I wouldn't, at no point do I want to sort of attempt to ape that. That was something that was specific to how he and I interact.
Yeah, we don't want to replicate that because it's not natural.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we do what's natural. We just play games together and talk about our week and things that happen.
Tell me about your day.
Well, listen, I better get going because I've got to be at work in half an hour. But
Damn.
it's been good to talk to you both. I will put this on YouTube. If you're listening to this and you're not in this Skype call, that's where you're listening to it. Otherwise, you can read about this in this month's Cubed magazine, which you can back us on Patreon, patreon.com/cubed, and get hold of that. And we will be putting out more content, probably with more YouTubers. I'm kind of hoping to turn this into a bit of an interviewee, podcasty series over the next few weeks.
You could call it WhoTube. Who's who of YouTubes?
I very much doubt that's not already taken.
Take that for free.
Thanks very much. But yeah, good to talk to you both. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks,
man. Anytime.
Bye-bye.
Doodles.